Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Happy Memorial Day, everybody. Welcome back. Lots to cover in this one. A lot of K12 crime as well. Lots of different stories all over the nation. End of the school year here, and a lot of things are getting exposed. And again, it's pretty much par for the course, but it's overwhelming. I want to start with this. First of all, there's not going to be an episode on this Wednesday, but there will be an episode on Friday where I will be talking with Dr. Robin McCutcheon again. She will be back on. We have yet to have that discussion, but we'll be covering a number of subjects, I am certain, and looking forward to that as always. First of all, I'll begin with this. Again, stretching back to not just the last episode, but many episodes, there is no doubt that much of the messaging, of course, that's taking place here across the news cycles is messaging that has not happened certainly within the last 5, 10, or I would even say, of course, 15, 20 years. That the constant discussions and the constant proof of, again, the war crimes of Israel, of course, and the discussion of the corporations that exist in the United States and who runs them and the pattern recognition that's been going on, all of this, again, is a very worthy discussion because it has a very, very deep history that is remarkably demonic. And again, one of their last plays, of course, being the people that they are, is they openly, again, name call, and then they seek to make laws in order to, again, outlaw free speech. That's ultimately what they want. We know that. They aren't going to stop, but it again, is one of their last moves. It's one of the last things that they can do, and I can tell you that I'm almost certain that even news cycles are tired of reporting on it on a constant basis because even they have to start questioning what's really going on. There was this particular post on greatawakening.win kind of discussing this a little bit at length, and I just wanted to read it. Again, it brings up Thomas Massey, of course. It brings up other examples, numerous examples, but here's what it said. They said, quote, "Anyways, I heard Thomas Massey lost from my brother, so I lurked here while on lunch break and saw much dooming. As a fellow noticer, this is what I gotta say. Thomas Massey lost good. Incredible, actually. And I don't even care if he's a good or bad guy. The optics are great. You know what normies are talking about. How a foreign country dumped millions into a U.S. election, left, right, center, whatever. That's what they're talking about. Shocked by it, actually. Now, do you dump millions into a congressional race in a mid-sized state if you're coming from a position of strength? No. That is a move of desperation. It's like in a football game when a team is losing, doesn't have many timeouts, and they got to run the 2-minute drill because they are losing. You don't run a hurry-up 2-minute drill if you're winning. You run the ball and call high-percentage passes to drain the clock. We are winning, not them. They are completely exposed like never before. AIPAC is exposed, Lucky Larry Silverstein, and his convenient 9/11 doctor's appointment is exposed. The USS Liberty has been exposed, Frankfurt School exposed, the Jewish Bolsheviks' genocide of Christians in the USSR exposed. People are watching old clips of Charlie Kirk talking about how Jewish intellectuals funded LGBTQ movement and anti-white sentiment that's so exposed. Dispensationalism and the infiltration of Christianity are exposed. Their role in the JFK assassination exposed. Jewish NGOs flooding Western countries with third worlders and Calgary Plan exposed. And the ironic part about that is that my new job, I'm the only white guy on my shift, and I work with a lot of Generation Africans, Vietnamese, Pacific Islanders, and Hispanics. And some of them know this stuff too. It's not just angry young white males. It says Zionists are desperate because they know their time is limited. You never could have talked about this even 5 years ago. Now it's mainstream. And they're being called an anti-Semite, Jew hater, or whatever doesn't mean anything. And I have been called that by people on here because there are no real argument against us. Never have I once heard any logical argument against us noticers. And the more this goes on, the more ridiculous it looks, and it gets memed on constantly. So glad Massey lost, and maybe Trump has something on the other guy. Who knows? Thomas Massey is more valuable losing than winning. Maybe this was a double win. Israel gets exposed more, and Trump has someone who will not be so principled libertarian. I don't think Trump is being over the top pro-Israel just because. I highly recommend unplugging for a while if you are worried. And at the end of the day, I think we'll all know what direction this is all going by the end of the year. Unquote. Again, I agree with that. That's certainly another angle, and there's no doubt again that the noticing continues, and people are continuing again to piece this all together, and then, of course, look locally. They're looking at their own state governments. They're knowing exactly what's going on with their state governments. Again, state politicians are jumping ship, and they're also circling the wagons. They're doing exactly what corrupt people do. Now, fortunately, there's actually some arrests occurring, which is kind of nice. On a variety of levels. First of all, of course, a great deal of Minnesota home health care Somali fraud. A bunch of people, again, are getting arrested. These businesses are getting shut down. That's a very good thing. Many of them, of course, are being court-ordered to pay the money back. I would say good luck getting the money back. Again, in many cases, they ship it out of our country illegally or they just hide it. But either way, a few days ago, this is from NPR News. It says feds charge 15 with bilking Medicaid programs in Minnesota. Federal authorities on Thursday said that they filed criminal charges against 15 people in Minnesota for allegedly stealing from federal programs, including one meant to help children with autism and another intended to help vulnerable people find stable homes. Again, this is what the Somalis do, and they do it practically everywhere. And again, an aspect of this, which I've brought up on the show, of course, and written about on Substack, is that the Somali individuals inhabit city council positions, school board positions, and they do the exact same kinds of things in those positions. They're not just all affiliated with home health care or Medicare, Medicaid, or, again, leering centers and all of that stuff. I mean, again, plenty of them do that. But they bring this fraud with them to city councils and within school districts. Again, this is full-blown racial profiling, and it has to happen. It has to. If a Somali randomly pops up out of the ground and finds their way onto a school board or a city council when normally in the past that's never been the case, and you even, again, as I brought up here regarding Anissa Liban in Westerville, Ohio, and people like her, you look at the vote totals, it's beyond suspicious. And then you dive into their finances and you notice again that money is missing. And then, of course, where are they getting money? Oh, it's from an empty building. What are the odds? These are not behaviors of people who are following the law. The problem here, too, is that this is not just 15 people. I mean, I'm glad that 15 people got arrested. Of course, it's been way more than that. And the numbers fluctuate all the time, depending on, again, where these people live and what state in which they operate. But as we've all seen on these videos, again, they're not even undercover videos. They're just citizen journalists walking into these buildings and confronting these people. But there are dozens and dozens and dozens of individuals who operate within these buildings. So I'm waiting for all of them to be rounded up. Because all of these people, not just 15, not just the ones at the top, it's endless individuals within those buildings are straight up involved in this kind of fraud and this kind of crime. I would love to see again on video the FBI or whomever just surround a building. Just surround it. Go into the building and then bring them all out in one giant long line perp walk where they're all cuffed and then they all get tossed in the back of a paddy wagon and then that's it. I mean, do an absolute sting operation on these buildings. That would be fantastic. So I'm glad arrests are being made. That's a good thing. I think they're going to continue. And I certainly hope, again, that all of the guilty parties go to jail. That it's not just the people at the top or the CEO or whoever's name is at the top of the letterhead of the so-called Leering Center or whatever else. I mean, round them all up. Toss them all in jail. If they're there, they know exactly what they're participating in. It shouldn't matter what low-level position they had within the fraud scheme. If they are there, they know that they are involved. And people, again, in law enforcement should know that they're involved. Okay. Tulsi Gabbard is out. Allegedly, her husband has a rare form of bone cancer. I wonder if he's jabbed. That was my first guess. Also, maybe it's a cover story, just to, again, have her declass more information on her way out as quickly as humanly possible, and then usher in her replacement, which is a Aaron Paul Lucas. He's going to be, of course, the acting director of national intelligence, but he served in the first Trump administration. He apparently fancies himself as a bit of a libertarian, so middle of the road, I guess. But yeah, he was nominated again by Trump to be the principal deputy director of national intelligence back in March of last year, 2025. He was confirmed in July, and then again just recently announced that he's now going to be the acting D&I director. So I have a feeling that there's going to be more James Comey, Barack Obama, John Brennan, James Clapper declassification that exists here, and then hopefully some high-profile arrests. That's what we long for. That's what we want to see, and it seems like that table is being set even more because, again, it was last summer, September, if I'm not mistaken, when, again, Tulsi Gabbard came out in front of the press gaggle there during a press conference, the White House press gathering, and openly dropped the hammer on Obama and his entire administration that they have all the documentation, they have all the emails, they have everything. Again, we're going to have to see what happens, but there's too much information out there, there's too much proof, and I'm not sure that they can talk their way out of this. Again, they're trying. Brennan gives speeches every now and again in, again, a foreign country or here in the United States. Barack Obama does the same thing. James Comey, of course, looks into his cell phone and cries that he's an innocent man and he's done nothing wrong, blah, blah, blah. I just don't know who's buying it anymore. They seem to be even a little sour and stale in the mouths of people in the left-wing media because not even they are bringing them up on a regular basis. I mean, if they were interested in defending themselves and they wanted the left-wing media to help them do that, which is typically what they've done in the past, why aren't they running to these Sunday shows on all these political channels and, again, just talking their way out of it or attempting to talk their way out of it? You would think that they would do that with some regularity. But it seems, again, that James Comey does it occasionally, not often. John Brennan does it occasionally, not often, but rarely to never is Obama out there doing it. James Clapper's all but off the scene and gone. There were just so many more people, of course, who were involved. Those are sort of the heads of the snake, if you will. Those are the main faces that people may recall, but you have individuals like Valerie Jarrett, Susan Rice, I mean, a lot of these people, even Jen Psaki. And she, of course, has her own show. Again, that would be one of the cool parts, too, is to see the secondary people and sort of the people who were behind the scenes. And certainly, again, the women, because there were a lot of women involved in that. I mean, again, treason, sedition, conspiracy to commit both. They were involved, too. So, yeah, round them all up. That's what we want to see. That's what has to happen. That's the real accountability that this country needs because that's real deterrence. Unfortunately, moving on here, you have this. And again, is this on purpose? Is this legit? Certainly seems like it, but I can't imagine this actually passing, although who's to say? This is from the Times of Israel, and it was titled, U.S. Jewish Groups Urge Senate to Back $1 billion Bipartisan Anti-Semitism Bill. Every single time. Law would require U.S. Education Department to adopt strategy to combat online anti-Semitism. Triple allocation of security funds for security at houses of worship. Again, this has false flag written all over it. There's going to be another fake shooting in a synagogue, another fake fire at a synagogue. Somebody paints a swastika someplace. I mean, give me a break. Again, the legislation, it says, also proposes $1 billion in security funding for homes of worship and other at-risk nonprofits, a key demand in a 6-point security proposal that Jewish federations of North America have been promoting on Capitol Hill. This is what has to be outlawed. All of these religious federations going to Washington, existing in Washington, and lobbying these individuals, which means blackmailing in many cases, to basically, again, give a yes vote to all of this. An occupied country? Absolutely. Infiltration instead of invasion? No doubt about it. But again, it's so tiresome. And it's on so many headlines. This is driving so many Americans crazy. Again, this is sponsored by James Lankford, Republican, quote unquote, from Oklahoma, and Jackie Rosen, a Jewish Democrat from Nevada. would require that the federal education department adopt civil rights strategy to fight anti-Semitism and force social media platforms to share more details about how they handle anti-Semitism online. Old auntie. We got to control old auntie one more time. Again, this is completely unconstitutional. They're showing their hand. They're telling everybody what they're interested in doing. If you disagree with them, you're the enemy. They want to destroy you, keep you from making money, keep you from exercising your God-given rights. They, of course, don't believe in God. That's their problem. But therein lies the issue. The simple fact, again, that any politician would even sponsor such a thing just shows that they're a traitor to the Constitution and our country. They don't do this, again, for any Christians. They don't do this for any other race or religion. It's just them, all of the time. But again, it's another headline, and it's a big boatload of money associated with this particular legislation. That's going to anger a lot of Americans, and it should. I think that's part of the point here, but at the same time, it seems highly unconstitutional. They're telling you they want to censor people. They're telling you exactly who they are and why they want to censor you, because you criticize people, and you criticize behaviors, and you criticize organizations. We get to do that. That's our God-given right. It wasn't given to us by man, it was given to us by God, and that's the point. Again, they're not going to stop until criticizing them is completely illegal and punishable by death. But it's these brazen moves that they make all of the time. People need to pay attention to this. This is a huge problem. Now, as we all know, another problem that they engage in is mass censorship. And it's happening constantly, of course, throughout the media, specifically when it comes to black crime, and of course when it comes to foreigner crime. In particular, again, if a white happens to be at the end of the knife or end of a gun, or again on the wrong end of the entire issue here. This particular story, again, didn't get a whole lot of play, and it didn't get a whole lot of attention. But it did on social media, and I certainly wanted to bring it up here. This is a post describing this entire situation from Matthew Bracken, but the individual, again, who this is about, is an Englishman by the name of Henry Nowak. Again, an 18-year-old British student, and here specifically is the post describing this. It says, quote, Henry Nowak died in handcuffs because the left taught police to fear racism more than death. The suicidal empathy that killed an 18-year-old British student. It says how decades of leftist identity politics, DEI indoctrination, multiculturalism dogma, and pathological altruism turned a routine street altercation into a preventable tragedy, and why the left owns every drop of this young man's blood. On December 3rd of 2025, just after midnight on Belmont Road in Portswood, the radical left's ideology claimed another innocent life. Side note, I didn't even hear of this back in December. So, again, that's how a lot of this gets buried. This is exactly how hard the whole lobby works in order to keep these stories from reaching the mainstream, let alone social media. It says Henry Nowak was a bright 18-year-old British-Polish accounting student from Shafford Hundred, Essex. He had absolutely smashed his A levels. He was walking home, strictly below the drink-drive limit, celebrating the end of his first university semester with his football teammates. Hours later, he was lying on the pavement, bleeding out from a fatal chest puncture and stab wounds to the backs of his legs, and he was handcuffed by the very police officers sworn to protect him. His killer was Vikram Singh Digwa, a 23-year-old carrying a massive 21-centimeter kirpan blade openly on the street, plus a smaller ceremonial one around his neck. When police arrived, they faced a choice between saving a bleeding youth or appeasing a minority suspect who immediately cried racism. Influenced by years of leftist indoctrination, the officers handcuffed the dying victim, Henry pleading that he had been stabbed. He gasped that he could not breathe. He collapsed and died at the scene. This was not mere police incompetence. It was the predictable, deadly outcome of suicidal empathy. Side note real quick, this of course was on open display, this very kind of behavior and similar behavior when a Muslim individual in Germany, I believe it was last year or the year before, was fighting with whites in the street, out in the open, in broad daylight. And then the police tackled the white guy. And then, of course, the Muslims stabbed the white police officer right through the throat with again, a butcher knife, killing him. And then eventually they took a couple of shots at the Muslim guy. He fell down to the ground. They cuffed him. And then, of course, the cop died. So, again, this is just absolutely insane, this kind of behavior. But this is the mind virus. This is brainwashing. This is exactly what it leads to. These individuals, these foreigners, these invaders, they know that they can scream racism and turn the heads of police officers and then again just point at somebody who's on the ground and say they were being racist or they were name calling me. Yes, that's why I stabbed them in the chest. This is also another example of something, again, that I just wrote about on Substack and defined on Substack, believe it or not, and it's very comparable. This has to do also with what's referred to as cognitive behavioral congruence. And again, basically what that means is you take an individual, whether they be of low IQ or they be brainwashed, and then you combine that with a certain set of behaviors that they either innately have as a result of being brainwashed or having a low IQ, and then you put them in a particular setting, you're likely to see particular behaviors and particular outcomes that are conducive to having either a low IQ or being brainwashed. And you're going to see that again on display in numerous kinds of settings, specifically in that Substack, titled that very thing, Cognitive Behavioral Congruence. I bring up again all of the twerking and the dancing and the fighting and the vain behavior and the self-absorbed behavior that you see typically among blacks at graduation ceremonies. This kind of behavior is so predictable that it happens year after year after year. I'm going to get into that a little more specifically here later, but I want to keep going with this story because, again, this is also part of the same problem. It says, quote, "The facts from the Southampton Crown Court are irrefutable. Henry bumped into Digwa, words were exchanged. Court played Snapchat footage shows Henry taunting Digwa, referencing being from Essex, quote unquote, while Digwa claims Henry used a racial slur, punched him, and pulled his turban. Digwa's response was to draw an 8-inch blade. He stabbed Henry 4 times, including the back of his legs, as the boy desperately tried to climb a fence to escape. Digwa's own recorded words were, quote, 'I'm a bad man.' Yet Digwa hid the stabbing from police while his mother, Kieran Carr, allegedly removed the weapon from the scene. Digwa instead weaponized leftist victimhood, accused the bleeding teenager of racism and drunken aggression. Body cam footage exposes the horrific police failure. Presented with a racism allegation from a minority suspect, officers ignored Henry's massive blood loss. They handcuffed him. This is the direct result of post-George Floyd DEI training and institutional capture by identity politics. Imagine the reverse scenario. If a white Brit stabbed a minority and accused the victim of racism, police would never hesitate to arrest the attacker. This is the 2-tier policing system created by labor and progressive activists. They have a knife crime epidemic. Well, it's not really knife crime, is it? I mean, that's not really what you call it. You have an illegal alien problem. You have an invasion epidemic. Anyway, I digress. They said, yet we hand out religious exemptions for massive blades to walk our streets unchallenged. Gad Sad perfectly defines this as suicidal empathy, the pathological leftist virus that forces Western societies to extend disproportionate compassion to outgroups at the direct expense of their own citizens' safety. The police prioritize the feelings of the potential victim of racism over a dying British teenager. Those handcuffs were the physical embodiment of a twisted ideology that views white, native victims as inherently less sympathetic than non-Western perpetrators. The left made this inevitable. They push mass, low-skilled immigration without assimilation. They enforce strict knife laws on native Britons while protecting cultural practices that put lethal weapons on our streets. Sula Braverman warned us about this 2-tier policing, but schools and media continue teaching that questioning multiculturalism equals bigotry. Keir Starmer and the labor establishment remain utterly silent on Henry's slaughter, contrasting sickening with their rapid virtue signaling on other issues. Henry Nowak was robbed of his future, and his death accelerates the loss of our social cohesion and leaves native Britons feeling like second-class citizens. Social media is rightfully outraged, and Elon Musk is appropriately correct to support a wrongful death suit against these cowardly officers. Without totally rejecting suicidal empathy, more Henry Nowaks will follow. The left bears absolute moral responsibility for Henry's death. Their politicians, activists, and captured institutions killed him as surely as the blade did. We demand immediate public inquiries into police training. We must end all religious weapon exemptions immediately. We must overhaul our immigration policies and reject identity politics for absolute colorblind law and order principles. Britain must choose life over ideology or watch its sons continue to bleed out in the streets while authorities wring their hands over racism, unquote. Yeah. And as we know here in the United States, there have been many instances, of course, where that's the case. Individuals, again, don't even get killed. They're just verbally assaulted. They stand up for themselves, not even physically, just verbally stand up for themselves. And then before you know it, they get charged with a crime. This, again, is the weaponization of the First Amendment. It's designed to demoralize people from speaking up and speaking out, and even, again, using words to protect themselves. It's why the First Amendment is first, and it's why the Second is second, because the Second protects the First. But of course, in a country where you don't have a First Amendment and you don't have a Second Amendment, what do you have? You have this. This is the predictable outcome. Again, this will continue to happen. It's an inevitability. And as we know, the sickening part is that this gets taught in school. It gets perpetuated by the individuals who run school districts, universities. This is taught in the classroom. To just tolerate your surroundings, even if they lead to your death. And the answer to that, of course, is no. We don't have to tolerate a lack of civility. We don't have to tolerate illegality. We don't have to tolerate unprofessionalism. We don't have to tolerate any of this. And the more that people speak out, the better. The more they write about it, the better. The more they stand up for it as it actually happens to them, to their faces, the better. That's where all of this has to go. This leads me now, of course, to my last Substack titled Cognitive Behavioral Congruence, the 2026 graduation ceremonial displays of low IQ and self-absorption. Again, nothing is new that's under the sun. When you see a particular kind of behavior, now we live in a world, of course, where you can even use an AI system to help define particular behaviors that you see. And you can ask these AI systems, okay, look, here's a set of behaviors that are existing in public. What are the psychological terms that are used for these kinds of behaviors? Now, as it turns out, a lot of these, of course, all this twerking and the chair throwing and the fighting and the slave dancing and the money throwing and everything else that they do, this is directly related to having a low IQ. And like I said earlier, when you take a person's brain capacity and you compare it with their behaviors, because one, of course, causes the other, but when you put them in a different scenario or a different environment, their behavior won't change from one environment to another, even when the environment or the environments that they're in are polar opposites. They just don't change. Their behaviors, again, are exactly the same. But again, this is directly related, to having a low IQ, which is genetic. I'm not saying that this can't exist on a mob mentality wavelength among white individuals. It can, and it does. Again, I play a video of the University of Madison, Wisconsin, where they, of course, play the song Jump Around, and they're graduating, of course, and of course the entire graduation ceremony is filled with probably every race that you can possibly imagine, but they're all doing it at the same time. They're just jumping to rap music. And again, I understand someone would say, lighten up, Sean, they're having a good time. It's a college setting. They get to have a little fun. They get to dance. They get to do whatever. The fact is that you can do all of that, I guess, but there's a time and a place for it, and it's not necessarily there. However, unfortunately, these kinds of behaviors are becoming mainstream among endless colleges, universities, and K-12 schools, and even a great deal of graduation ceremonies, because they're perpetuated by the adults who work within the environments, thereby showing that it's a combination of both low IQ and a submission to mob mentality, and of course, useless tradition. Or again, whatever you would call it, I don't know, geographic tradition, like they jump to one song in one place, whereas, at another university, they have another tradition. Again, it's like all the different songs and chants that they all engage in at football games. That's mob mentality. But that also, again, shows a lower IQ for those that consistently participate in those behaviors. So again, I want to read a little bit of this because, again, I find this fascinating, but this is the reason. I mean, there is an actual reason as to why we see these kinds of behaviors. I started off and I simply said, lower cognitive ability or low IQ visibly matches or expresses itself through impulsive, uninhibited, loud, chaotic, or uncivil public behavior, which can be defined in many ways. As it turns out, the most commonly used name to define this erratic, low IQ behavior among the minority population in America tends to be referred to as cognitive behavioral congruence. It's just like also this, by the way, side note, it's like all of the teen takeovers that you see again with them robbing stores. It's not whites doing it. It's just not. And again, people are told, see something, say something. Well, what I see mobs of blacks, not just teenagers, but there are adults participating as well, legal adults, and they're running all at once through these stores and through particular areas, fighting people, setting things on fire, and stealing things that don't belong to them. This again is low IQ mob mentality. I went on, I said it's a coalescence of one's brain capacity and common behavior in other settings, but within a very public forum, specifically, of course, these graduation ceremonies, where such behavior is not widely considered civil, nor the norm. They literally fail to mentally and behaviorally differentiate between a McDonald's and a five-star restaurant. Therefore, this is also where lower intelligence often produces less edited or thoughtful behavior. Again, no inner monologue. No conscience. They're not saying this is a bad idea. What I'm about to engage in is probably going to get me arrested, hurt, killed, noticed in a way that I don't want to be. I mean, there's no filter process. It says, which tends to be more abrasive and less masked by a lack of social intelligence, impression management, or foresight. In the context of a graduation ceremony, they view their graduation as an actual accomplishment, and sadly, perhaps the best one that they will ever have, without ever considering the concept of accomplishment in the future. There are other common names that define this behavior and phenomenon, such as low self-control, which is a core idea from Gottfredson and Hershey's general theory of crime and developmental psychology, that people with lower IQ tend to have weaker executive functions, planning, impulse inhibition, and foresight, and this leads to behavior that is far more raw, immediate, and less socially filtered. Public dancing, twerking, screaming, or turning formal events into spectacles is a classic example of failing to inhibit impulses in situations that demand restraint. Again, there's no restraint because there's no thinking. Poor behavioral inhibition, linked to frontal lobe executive function deficits, which correlates strongly with lower IQ. High IQ individuals are better at suppressing dominant responses. For example, quote, I want to dance wildly, yet they restrain it during a graduation. Lower IQ groups show less inhibition, so internal impulses flow more directly into public action. There's also this, which is absolutely hilarious, and I saw this video, and my apologies for not being able to play it here. It was 9 minutes long at least, but, excuse me, it was a black guy, and he's on X, and he apparently has his own show on YouTube, or something to that effect. But either way, he decides to rationalize the participation of predominantly black students engaging in these kinds of behaviors, and of course, he blames whites. And he ends up saying, so what is it What is it with white people that you don't want to dance or you don't enjoy dancing when you're celebrating something? Why is it that it's blacks doing it and the whites don't do it? Is it because whites are all racist and you look at this kind of behavior which typically exists among blacks and you just can't comprehend that they can get excited over something? I mean, that's his actual thought process, proving low IQ. He actually believes that we look at that and we go, oh, you know what? We're jealous because we're white and we can't do what they do. And gosh, I would really like to twerk and, take my shoes off and stomp around and slave dance and throw cash up in the air and have my adult friends participate and my peers participate and, this, that, and the other. I mean, we would love to do that as whites, but we just can't. So blacks are the only ones who are privileged enough to be able to do such a thing. He actually thinks that that's how we think. I mean, again, it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. But he's basically saying, again, don't criticize blacks for behaving this way at a graduation just because you don't do it. That's again, his moral equivalent there. But that's low IQ. He's so dumb, he actually thinks that that's a justifiable response for that kind of behavior in what is supposed to be a civil ceremony. Because again, typically speaking, when it's broken down by race and you look at it racially, if there are multiple races within a singular ceremony like that, like a graduation, again, whether it be K12 or whatever, specifically K12, but if it's K12, you're typically not going to see that kind of behavior. There might be a few offshoots, again, a few outliers, so to speak, who engage in that kind of behavior. You actually even see it at the end of a general ceremony like the one here in town that just happened, where the ceremony ends, and then you'll see again where all the students are sitting. Some of the students, it's kind of a sociological observation, which you can easily observe, but some of the students will just stand up from their chairs and just walk toward their parents and leave the establishment, where basically they haven't been told to do that. They've been told you're going to stand up, you're going to walk in a particular order out of the building, and you're basically going to exit the same way that you walked in. Again, I'm not saying that one way is good or not. I'm not saying that one way is bad or it isn't. In fact, if it was me, and I've done this, is you just get up and you leave. Again, there's a difference between doing that and throwing money around and, again, tossing your hat up in the air and taking your clothes off and dancing and, again, taping yourself and recording yourself while you're doing it. That's all the self-absorbed behavior that exists. But again, when that's the expectation and when that's allowed, you're going to get even more of it. You're perpetuating a low IQ behavior that is going to exist in one of those settings where, again, if that's the dominating personality and that's the dominating behavior within that environment, you can guarantee you're going to get it. There's also low conscientiousness plus high extroversion. It says low conscientiousness, impulsivity, poor self-discipline strongly correlates with lower cognitive ability. When combined with high extroversion, you get highly energetic, attention-seeking public displays that ignore social norms. And then again, present-oriented time preference. Lower IQ individuals tend to heavily discount the future. They prioritize immediate gratification and emotional expression. This feels good right now, quote unquote, over long-term dignity or reputation. Again, it goes on and on and on with endless examples. And then, of course, I play the examples by showing the videos. And I just end by saying this because, again, clearly not every graduation is the same. But the more that a graduation is loaded with individuals who are of lower IQ, the more likely you are to see, again, that kind of self-absorbed erratic behavior where a person cannot differentiate from one environment to the next. It said modern psychology unfortunately avoids directly connecting IQ to group behavioral outcomes, but the underlying mechanisms are executive dysfunction, low self-control, and weak behavioral inhibition. Therefore, when you combine low IQ with genetic traits, as low IQ is genetic and all IQ is genetic, it says as a public presence and atmosphere also combine with one another, at the end of an era within a shared environment while also being combined with similar habits or traits, behaviors, and mob mentality, the likelihood of this low IQ demonstrating itself publicly in mass dramatically increases. And then I said, in fact, it's so predictable it occurs every year. See you at graduation in 2027, because again, it's going to happen next year. And I'll be here for it, and I'll put together another Substack because, again, this kind of behavior is that predictable. Now, here's another avenue where this shows itself, and these kinds of behaviors show themselves. Again, you could refer to it maybe as race protection, circling the wagons, however you want to do it, but the bias that exists here is blinding, and it's beyond obvious. I'm sure you remember the case, I believe it was back in 2021. I covered it here on the show, but it was a white Virginia female elementary school teacher who was shot by one of her 6-year-old students with a gun in the stomach. They, of course, arrested the mother. She ended up going to jail for 4 years for child neglect and federal weapons charges. And then again, the female teacher who was shot, she survived. She ended up winning a $10 million civil lawsuit as a result. But the black female principal of the building was aware that the child was a violent risk and a risk to people who, again, worked there. Certainly this particular teacher, because there were endless warning signs and verbal warnings to this particular principal about this child's behavior, even the day of the actual shooting itself. And she was criminally charged, again, for neglect and not doing what she was supposed to do. Of course, mandated reporting, I'm sure, was one of the charges. But this is from KDH News. And it was titled, Judge Dismisses Charges Against Ex-Administrator Accused After Student Shot Teacher. A judge dismissed all charges against a former school administrator accused of ignoring warnings about a 6-year-old with a gun. The judge in the case, a black female. The principal who was being charged, a black female. This is not an accident. Here's what it says. It says, again, a Virginia judge on Thursday dismissed all charges against a former school administrator accused of ignoring repeated warnings that a 6-year-old had a gun hours before the teacher was shot. Acting on a defense motion, Circuit Judge Rebecca Robinson issued the ruling on the 4th day of the trial of Ebony Parker, who was charged with 8 felony counts of child neglect. The court is of the legal opinion that this is not a crime, Robinson said. As it turns out, it is a crime. But if you're going to allow this kind of behavior to exist, and you're going to show racial preference in a particular case, well, accountability will never occur. And my apologies here, it was in 2023. I think I said 2021. 2023 shooting that left teacher Abby Zwerner wounded. Prosecutors said that the charges issued in the grand jury indictment were for each of the bullets in the gun brought into Zwerner's classroom. Each count could have carried a maximum penalty of 5 years in prison upon conviction. Quote, we have hoped the community would have had the opportunity to weigh in through the full judicial process, quote unquote. Not sure why that would have to happen. But they said, nevertheless, the court has now concluded the matter as it deemed appropriate under the law. Our office remains committed to pursuing justice with integrity, transparency, and fairness, while continuing to honor the role that citizens play in our criminal justice system. Parker lowered her head and cried when the judge announced her decision, then hugged her attorneys afterwards. Defense attorney Curtis Rogers told the judge in making his motion that Parker's decision on the day of the shooting wasn't an act of neglect, quote unquote. Sure it was. Now, of course, you can decide, get a load of this. It says Parker was not called to testify during the trial, and on Wednesday, a video interview of Parker conducted 3 days after the shooting by a school district human resources officer was played in the courtroom for the jury. Parker said that she was told about reports that the student had a gun in his backpack, but she said she could not leave her office due to ongoing testing. A reading my God. My God. Hey, this kid might have a gun. No, I can't leave right now. There's testing going on. Weigh that one. Again, weigh that. A kid with a gun or testing? Which one's more important to address? Low IQ. I'm telling you. There's no way around it. It says a reading specialist who first reported the concerns then searched the backpack, but no gun was found, Parker said. Parker then said that the student's mother would arrive to pick him up and go through the rest of his belongings. Zwerner testified earlier in the trial that during recess, this is the teacher who was shot now, on the school playground, the student wore an oversized jacket and kept both of his hands in his pockets the entire time. Zwerner said she sent a text message with that observation to the reading specialist who had been tipped off earlier by students about the gun and reported it to Parker. Not neglect? Are you kidding me? It says after recess, the student continued to wear the jacket in the classroom, where Zwerner was shot at the reading table. Zwerner spent nearly 2 weeks in the hospital, required 6 surgeries, and does not have the full use of her left hand. A bullet narrowly missed her heart and remains in her chest. Good Lord. I mean, what has to happen in order for, again, an individual, a principal in that position to actually be charged with a crime? Do they have to be a different race? Probably in this case, yes. Do they actually have to have their hand on the gun with the child at the same time as the trigger is being pulled in order to be charged? Probably. But again, this is an immediate reaction thing. You hear a child has a gun, you immediately go after the child. Instantly. You strip them naked looking for a gun if you have to. But they again, I can't be bothered with it. And then again, no criminal charges. It's astounding. She'll find a job someplace. That's the funny part. She'll probably find a job somewhere in the education business. Maybe not a licensed position, but she'll be back in the business because this is all she knows. Now again, is covering up this kind of behavior, is it solely racial? Of course not. This happens with copious amounts of people. Again, I exist in a school district here in the town where I live, where they're bringing back an individual who was accused of sexually assaulting a boy in a bathroom stall as the school principal. I think he did it, but again, he's white, and the school board is white. And without thinking too much about it, they immediately, again, decided to bring him back, apparently. So again, there are certain behaviors here that have to be noticed, but also, corruption is corruption any way you slice it. Which is why there was this case too, which is why this is so prevalent within the education business. The business of, again, image protection, sweeping things under the rug, in particular when it comes to sexual crime. I played this in the last war video, but there's been an update here. This is the case of Karen Collinger, a superintendent of Longview Public Schools in Washington State. And she was arrested on May 21st or the 22nd of 2026 for her alleged role in mishandling and obstructing the investigation into student-on-student sexual assaults and misconduct at Mark Morris High School. Here's a little background on it, and here's exactly what apparently happened. It says the case involves allegations of hazing and sexual assaults by older varsity basketball players against younger junior varsity players, occurring as early as November of 2025 or around Thanksgiving through early 2026. Incidents reportedly included victims being forcibly dragged into a locked varsity team locker room, pinned down, partially disrobed, and subjected to sexual harassment or assault. Police later charged 2 teenagers with crimes including second-degree rape, unlawful imprisonment with sexual motivation, indecent liberties with forcible compulsion, and indecent exposure. Allow me to translate, because I went to high school once too. This means that those kids were held down and sodomized with something. Probably a broomstick, probably something else. This happened at my high school. I mean, this is a thing, again, that goes on. This is why locker rooms are arguably one of the least safe places in an entire school. It, of course, then says that Collinger and other district school officials were allegedly made aware of the issues as early as January 29th of 2026, well before police involvement escalated. She was charged with 1 felony of tampering with a witness, 2 gross misdemeanors of failure to report as a mandated reporter, and obstructing a law enforcement officer. Yeah. District leadership knew about the misconduct, but chose to handle it internally rather than immediately reporting to law enforcement. Cloninger allegedly directed staff to manage the matter internally. Ah, yes. Keep it inside. Don't let it leave the building. Try to manage it inside. School administrators do this in every school district all of the time. She discouraged discussion, and told employees that they were not obligated to report it despite concerns about mandatory reporting obligations. When police contacted her in early February 2026 after social media reports surfaced, she reportedly said that the issue was already investigated and handled internally. Yes, I'm sure. Well, now she's wearing jailhouse green, sitting in a jail. Give this news report a listen in 3, 2, 1.
No comment from the Longview superintendent as she left court today. She is facing charges in connection with a student sexual assault case at a Longview high school. Thank you for joining us. I'm Christine Pitawanich. This was the first time Karen Cloninger faced a judge after being arrested on Thursday, accused of tampering with a witness and obstructing the investigation. Let's get right to our Devin Haskins outside the courthouse this evening. Devin, you tracked down court documents and they are filling in some gaps in the case. So bring us up to speed.
Yeah, the probable cause documents provided by Longview Police allegedly detail how Karen Cloninger tried to downplay that sexual assault case at Mark Morris High School, even going as far as one point telling staff that wanted to report it that they weren't obligated to tell police. In Cowlitz County Court, Karen Cloninger's only words were affirming her name when asked by the judge during her first appearance.
Correct.
Cloninger, the Longview school superintendent, faces a felony count of tampering with a witness and misdemeanor charges of failing to report and obstructing law enforcement.
We do have concern about, under Rule 3.2, the interference with the administration of justice.
Longview police say district staff first learned of the alleged sexual assaults at Mark Morris High School as early as January 29th. That was 11 days before police were contacted by a victim. According to the probable cause statement, when the assaults were first brought to Cloninger's attention, she told the principal and 2 other district staff members that they were not obligated to report it at this point and would instead handle the investigation themselves. The district would hold several meetings over a roughly 2-week period without involving police. During one meeting on February 4th, investigators said Cloninger tried to downplay the incident and told Principal Aaron Whitwright to squash the situation, saying, quote, "Tell the kids on the team we don't want any more rumors." Adding, "Aaron, you better figure this out. You better do it right, because this is a career killer." Less than a week later, the principal sent a letter to parents criticizing what he called false rumors and speculation, and said the district had already investigated a report and made appropriate consequences. The court documents say that when staff brought up the need for transparency, Cloninger repeatedly dismissed or suppressed the idea.
There's a plethora of information about suppression and manipulation of facts and information that slowed down law enforcement's ability to timely and aggressively investigate sexual assaults against children in this community.
Cloninger's defense attorney, Johnny McMullen, spoke in court.
Karen has never wanted to do anything but address these issues. She's not hiding from these issues. Quite the opposite, Your Honor.
On February 10th, police arrested 2 students for allegedly sexually assaulting younger teammates on the basketball team. On Thursday, Longview police arrested Karen Cloninger.
We are obviously fighting the charges. We are not in agreement with what's been indicated.
Karen Cloninger will be back in court for her formal arraignment on June 10th. Back to you.
Devin Haskins reporting live in Longview. Thank you, Devin. And a reminder, if you or someone you know is a survivor of sexual assault, help is available 24/7. One place you can start is on your screen. It is the National Sexual Assault Hotline. That number there is 1-800-656-4673.
Couple of things. First of all, she's not the only guilty party. Who else didn't go to the police? Who else didn't report it to the police who's a school employee? That's kind of number one. And number two, you would think that just as a procedural matter, so that you don't have to manage it as a school district, is that when you hear of something like that, you would just immediately go to the police and have them investigate. Because if they don't conduct an investigation that's proper, whose fault is it? It's the cops. It would be their fault. It wouldn't be the school's fault. These individuals, again, try to juggle flaming bowling pins all of the time, rather than just dropping them and saying, we're not going to play that game. We're just going to go to the police. We're going to pass this ball to the police because that's exactly what they're supposed to do. And then, of course, they always frame it as being rumors. Well, they're online rumors, and the rumors are out there, and there's nothing we can do about social media rumors. Every school administrator says that about very serious things, instead of immediately passing it off to police the second that they hear about it. She shouldn't be the only one who's being criminally charged here. There should be others. Yes, there have been students. That's fantastic. But what about, again, the building principal? This is a career killer if you don't handle this properly. Did he handle it properly? Did the principal handle it correctly? Who's to say? It's a case like that that defined my entire career as a school teacher. It was this exact thing that the people who should have been in jail, who covered it up, were let go. No criminal charges, no investigation into their behavior, nothing. They were just allowed to come after me. Again, I hate to make it about me, but this is where my PTSD kicks in, because this is exactly the thing. This is exactly the topic of my first book and all of my books. This is exactly the subject that happens within school districts all of the time, is that when you do the right thing, the system will come after you. But when you do the wrong thing, you immediately panic and you immediately try to cover it up and say, well, I was never told. Well, I didn't know about this. Well, I didn't know about that. And then a couple of people just randomly lose their jobs, or they, again, are allowed to resign, or they're allowed to get a job somewhere else in another district, and they brush it under the rug and they just act like none of that ever happened. When in fact, in all of these cases, endless school employees who knew that line is a whole lot longer than the people who didn't. And the parents, again, of the abused children should have immediately gone to the police. Instantly. You don't call the school and be like, hey, my kid was sexually assaulted in your locker room. Do something about this. You certainly don't do that as a parent. You go to the police immediately. Or at the very least, you call that hotline number. Certainly if you don't trust the local police, which of course in the town where I live, why would you? I just want people to fully understand and fully grasp that this kind of behavior happens from the very top. Again, she was a superintendent. It happens from the very top all the way down to a basic classroom teacher. It's everybody. And it's in every school district. Every school district engages in covering up serious abuses that take place specifically towards students. And even, again, abuses that take place from students towards staff members also. Image protection is their number one concern. But this too is low IQ. They're not thinking about the consequences. They believe that handling things in-house, quote unquote, is the way to get business done. And it isn't. You pass it off to the police every single time. That way you don't have to deal with it. But yeah, I'm glad she's gone. She'll lose her license. She should. She should lose her pension. She should lose all of it. Now again, speaking of the cognitive behavioral congruence here, I want to revisit a particular individual who is a school board member in Upper Arlington, Ohio. And I put together a Substack article about her back in December of 2025. But this woman can't seem to shut up. And of course, she's insane. I think that goes without saying. And she apparently enjoys emailing individuals, again, who support her or whatever. And she just sends out these emails to people. And she espouses all of her left-wing communistic attitudes, which are highly bigoted. And this is a one Nadia Satyani. She is also, by the way, she's an Indian lady. And she happens to be a PhD candidate at Ohio State University, I believe for a PhD in education. This is the same woman again who was directly involved with the bullying of a white male student who attended that school district, and that bullying and her strong support for having him expelled for expressing his opinion, apparently, having to do with the smell of her house and Indian food or something to that extent, led to him killing himself with his dad's gun. His name, of course, was Carter Adele. I've put together another Substack, which I'm going to release here on Monday morning, regarding this particular email that was sent my way that she apparently again sent out to her supporters. And I want to read this email now, which of course I'll include the entire thing in the Substack article along with some other analysis, but I want to do that here in this episode because this is too important. This is a quintessential example of the mind virus that exists among the left and the communistic left. They say things without thinking about what they're saying. And they don't know that when they talk and they say particular things and use particular made-up words, which is all, again, just Marxist communistic jargon, that they probably never said 10 or 20 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, but they're using it now like it matters. And they don't understand how brainwashed they are. And then, of course, they rationalize their usage of all of these words and their ideologies, basically saying that if anybody doesn't agree with them, then they have to be eliminated. And that's not a stretch, because you're going to hear what this woman says, and she's a full-blown bigot. There's no way around it. She doesn't use facts, she just name calls, she uses names, and then, of course, she ostracizes a very specific race of people, you can guess which, and then she justifies that participation. So here's her email. And again, she has at the very beginning, if it's too long to read, then you can just read this little paragraph. So here's the paragraph, and then I'm going to read the entire email. It says, 3 cheers for 3 wins. Your collective advocacy is driving real change, resulting in tangible wins like new cultural holiday guidelines, Purple Star recognition for military families, and formal board acknowledgement of our need for systemic ecosystem strategy. While the work to unravel entrenched cultural dynamics is far from over, your voices are successfully building the durable structures all our students deserve, unquote. That's her summary of her own email. Let me break through some of the word usage here. First of all, if she's describing collective advocacy, that's, again, communistic jargon for she's an activist, basically. She's a political activist. When she says systemic ecosystem strategy, what that means is that she's interested in removing and ignoring any practice, person, or behavior that is white or involves white people, or again, anything that she disagrees with. That's what that means. And then, of course, at the very end there, she said, building the durable structures all our students deserve. This is the soft bigotry of the left and the hypocrisy of the left. They'll bash white people, and then in the last sentence, she'll say, but I care about all students. No, you don't. And it's beyond evident that you don't. So here's her email, and it's disturbing. I almost want to read this without interruption, but it's going to be very difficult. She says, quote, "Hi, friends. I hope your families are finding ways to pause and connect during this month of mayhem, and celebrations. As I reflect on this school year, I am reminded of some necessary and difficult conversations about the culture inside our schools. Keep in mind," again, I'm already interrupting, but keep in mind, she openly again was advocating for the expulsion of this child, which led to his mental breakdown because he's never been in trouble before. And he wasn't in trouble in this scenario, but they made it sound like he was. Backed him into a corner, suspended him for a day or so because he voiced his opinion again in her home away from school, off school time, about the smell of her house because it smelled like Indian food or something to that extent. And then again, she entered the building and sought to have him expelled from the district. And she's openly admitting now in this that she's interested in entering these schools when it comes to conversations about the culture within schools. She's admitting that she's over-participating as a board member. She goes on here, she says, "This week, I heard from a recent graduate who described experiencing a profound sense of othering starting in elementary school. Heartbreakingly, we have previously heard these sentiments from alumni who graduated 50 years ago. I don't believe that for a minute." And the term othering, I had to look that up. It basically means that you feel like you've been excluded from something. Fucking deal with it. Welcome to school. Welcome to the school environment. That's what the school environment, that's how it's designed. Just deal with it. It says, when you consider our community's history, a history with redlining restrictive covenants and literally paving over the grave sites of black families, I can feel like the tide of our past is too strong to turn. Again, everybody's a racist, except her. But I am writing to you today with a deep and genuine sense of hope. I am hopeful because the tide is turning, and it is turning because of you. For too long, the burden of demanding change in our district fell almost entirely on the shoulders of the families who were actively being hurt by the system. But recently, we have seen a powerful shift because so many of you recognized how important it is to speak up. Victimized students and their families are no longer carrying this burden alone. Your engagement is giving our institutions the ability to move. While change is rarely as fast as we want it to be, I want to share 3 notable updates on what your voices have achieved. Number 1, cultural calendar and accommodations guidance. While we did not achieve the structural calendar changes that many of us advocated for, we did secure a vital layer of structural protection. The district is working on finalizing assessment, teaching, and learning guidance to help staff avoid scheduling major assessments, field trips, or one-time events on significant cultural and religious holidays. Well, good for her. What this means, there is a way for families to submit accommodation requests. This draft was shared at our May board meeting. And this makes it easier for parents to negotiate their family's identity classroom by classroom. It is a tangible step towards celebrating our students and protecting their dignity. She's lost her mind. Number 2, the ecosystem strategy. Here it comes. Historically, our district has treated cultural challenges as isolated individual incidents rather than looking at the environment as a whole. This year, the board formally recognized the need for an ecosystem strategy. Again, this is all Marxist jargon. A comprehensive look at how our policies, practices, and culture interact. Liz, George, Stump, and I were the ad hoc committee that develops the first draft that was shared at our April board meeting, and there's a link to it. While this specific work has currently been placed on an indefinite hold, the fact that the board recognized its necessity is a notable step forward. We have named the system, and we have agreed that systemic problems require systemic solutions. That is a bell that cannot be unrung. I hate it when they say systemic. It's like nails on a chalkboard. Can't stand it. Sends a chill down my spine. It's so retarded, it hurts my body. Number 3, Purple Star schools and military families. This school year, families of active military personnel reached out to me to share the unique challenges their children face. That means one person who had a concern. That's all. She makes it sound like everybody's emailing her. I doubt that. By working closely with these families in our district administration, we were able to take concrete action. Number 1, I am incredibly proud to share that this collaboration allowed as Purple Star schools. While this is just a drop in the bucket of our broader inclusion work, there's that word, it is a deeply meaningful structural commitment for these students, and we are actively working towards seeing even more schools recognized next year. If she's a PhD candidate, she needs to really work on her writing skills. This is, she'll fit right in Ohio State because they're all crazy, but yeah, she's terrible. It says the work ahead. We will continue listening. Here it goes. This is a big one. We will continue listening to IEP, Black, LGBTQAI+, Asian, Muslim, and Jewish families, all of whom are sharing strikingly similar stories about the need to feel safe and welcome in our buildings. Who did she leave out? White people. She left out white people. She's telling everybody that white people are the problem and that all these other racial groups, they're being attacked by white people. She's creating division where it probably doesn't exist. She's creating more of it. If it already exists, fine, but you can't control society. You can't control the noticing. You can't control what other people are thinking or feeling. But a Marxist and a communist will always try. And the way that they do it is by marginalizing a particular race of people, and it just so happens that it's always white people. It says the challenge of unraveling decades of entrenched cultural dynamics is huge. It will not be solved overnight, and it will not be solved with hushed voices. Translation, whites are racist, and if you don't scream it from the rooftops, they'll continue to be racist. But we are no longer starting from scratch, she said. We are building a coalition of neighbors who refuse to accept the illusion of harmony. She's nuts. She's a communist. She doesn't believe in white people. She doesn't believe in harmony. She wants division and violence. And her words and her actions have already gotten a white student to kill himself. This woman belongs in jail. In fact, she said, the seeds of our next steps are already taking root. To begin actively dismantling this pervasive culture of othering, there's that word again, made up word, I am currently reviewing resources and activities to use as a launch pad for a much broader community-wide effort. Keep an eye out. I will be sharing more soon about how you can join this movement. Oh, I bet it's a barrel of fun. In fact, somebody should infiltrate that particular so-called movement that she has coming out, or get together or whatever it is, and record it. Because I bet she just white bashes the entire time. She wraps up and says, for now, I'm asking you to stay engaged. Keep writing the emails, keep asking the hard questions, and keep showing up for one another. I remain committed to building lasting, transparent systems so that your voices are always heard, and every student gets what they need to flourish. Every student. Not white people, not white students, but everybody else. We are in this together, she said, and I am deeply grateful for your partnership. I wish you a summer filled with love, hope, and fun. Bears, let's go with gratitude, Nadia Santiani. And then at the end it says, views in this message are my own. They are not originating from Upper Arlington City Schools, nor are they official speech of the district. But you're representing a school board and a school district. So yes, they're your own. But you're not taking into consideration who you affiliate with. She also affiliates with another group, which I lay out in the Substack, that's referred to as Erase the Space. This is an activist group started by two K12 school teachers in central Ohio. I believe they teach in the Olentangy area. And again, they're communists. It's just two white communists. And again, their use of the term and the words erase the space, as I lay out again in the Substack, basically means get rid of white people, within Ohio. This is how far left these people are. And again, when their words and their actions lead to the death of a child that they specifically targeted and bullied and intimidated the adults within the building, allegedly, that led to the kid being suspended, the late departed Carter Adele, that when they do all of that, they still justify their participation in their political ideology. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a cult. Because that's the behavior of a cult. Cult members have to be brainwashed. They don't know they are, hence the brainwashing. They then inadvertently, without their knowledge, brainwash the masses around them. They want everybody who attends to be on the same wavelength as them, which is brainwashing. And then if someone ends up dead as a result of the brainwashing, they rationalize their own participation in their own brainwashing, not calling it brainwashing, but that's what it is. And then they justify their participation within the cult, not knowing it's a cult, to then move on and get past it, looking like they still care about everybody, while still brainwashing and being a cult member, not knowing they're brainwashed and not knowing they're in a cult. No one's ever going to convince me that American schools are not cults. They share too many of the similarities of a cult. If this episode alone hasn't laid that out, I don't know what does. Hiding illegal sexual abuse, brushing it under the rug, and then police have to intervene and actually make an arrest. This woman, to my knowledge, is either being sued, going to be sued, but the family of Carter Adele has a lawyer. If I was that lawyer, I would encourage that family again to continue to sue if they aren't already. This email is damning enough that this woman belongs in a padded room, if not worse. She's nuts. She's using Marxist communistic jargon as everyday vernacular, believing that what she is saying is reality. I'm telling you, it is a mental illness. This is all a mental illness. This woman is crazy. And why more people, and I have the answer to my own question, but why more people don't show up to the Upper Arlington School District and those board meetings and tear her a new one is because they're brainwashed. Because they're afraid. They're afraid of this skinny little Indian woman who is a bully. She's openly and in writing ostracizing an entire race by default. She doesn't say we don't like white people, I don't like white people. But when you bring up every other race, except for white people, you're blaming white people. That's it. You're blaming them for existing. You're blaming them for participating in particular things, having an opinion, having a brain. Again, she's doing it in writing. She's admitting it. But if she were again confronted with this email, how would she justify it? She would have to. She would immediately say, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that some people are sharing bad experiences and I just want to get to the root bottom and root cause of the entire problem and blah, blah, blah. Her response to such a thing is so predictable, it's embarrassing. But that's because emails like this are predictable among the criminally insane. She's nuts. No way around it. Normalizing this kind of jargon, I mean, we have Obama to thank for that, and of course the left and higher education and, you name it. But this is not how real people talk. That email is what a mental patient would type out. If, again, they're trying to do a number of things, actually believe what they're actually saying, but also, again, justify and rationalize their participation in the past suicide of a white male student. So I'm going to hear more about this woman, and I encourage, again, the individuals up there to continue to send me information, and I was grateful to receive this particular email from a person who I've communicated with in the past about this, but this woman is certifiable. So, yeah, good luck with your PhD in education. You'll probably get it with flying colors. Okay, jab stuff. A couple of things here real quick. The evening that Kyle Busch died, the NASCAR driver, former NASCAR driver, I sent it to Jesse James, texted it to him, and he got back with me immediately. And he said that he has a family member who is close with a family, and they were immediately saying that it was pulmonary embolisms was the cause of death. And as it turns out, that apparently was. The only other NASCAR driver to recollection here that had to do with, I should say an individual suffering from blood clotting, I believe was Brian Vickers, if I'm not mistaken. And he, again, very publicly had blood clotting in his legs that traveled to his lungs, even traveled to his heart. He's had reoccurrences of it, apparently, again, sitting for long periods of time, and so on and so on. Then, of course, the rumors immediately, because it's everybody's default setting, certainly anybody who's not brainwashed, is did he take the COVID shots? Again, people online saying, yes, he did. We were close with the family. We know he took the shots. Certainly NASCAR pushed the shots. They pushed him at all their events. They probably pushed him on most of their employees, to say the least. I don't have any proof that he did. I scoured the internet for any online posts or social media posts pertaining to being vaccinated, quote unquote. As we know, a lot of those "I'm vaccinated" stickers were on people's social media accounts. There was some criticism that his wife leveled toward the whole COVID lockdown thing, basically saying, we're done with COVID already. Lift the restrictions. We're tired of this. That kind of attitude, I guess, which is fine. But his behavior would kind of indicate that he wasn't a shot-taking kind of guy. He seemed sort of anti-authority. I mean, he marched to the beat of his own drum, which is good. He was certainly an aggressive race car driver, but again, pulmonary embolisms are a serious deal, and as we know, are directly related to taking COVID shots also. So there's lots of causes for it. There were also rumors, of course, spreading that he had been poisoned. He and his wife apparently engaged in a lawsuit against Pacific Life Insurance having to do with not paying out elderly life insurance policies for the elderly or something to that tune. And there was apparently a settlement that was reached a few months back. And then, of course, this happened, so the timing is suspect. But again, I don't know where to land on it. There's a lot of rumors swirling, and rightfully so. Because again, dying of pulmonary embolisms at the age of 41 is unusual, and put it that way. I wanted to mention this too. I saw this on Fox News and I thought it was a bit odd, and one of those things that could certainly be rife with fraud, and certainly a money pit if someone decided to participate. But Fox News had on a Dr. Janet Nishwat, a family and emergency medicine physician, and she was on there advocating for this super advanced AI CT scan thing that basically alleges that it detects pancreatic cancer and subtle signs of pancreatic cancer, quote unquote, up to 3 years before a traditional diagnosis. It's referred to as REDMOD, REDMOD, radiomics-based early detection model. Again, anytime I hear of these cancer screenings and a lot of this stuff, I just immediately think that it's connected to fraud, because it's almost always connected to other drug companies wanting, individuals, of course, to take a particular kind of drug to basically say, hey, if you take this now, you won't get cancer in 3 years. And people do it because they believe it. Again, they never advocate for anything that Dr. Makis is pushing. They never advocate for ivermectin, fenbendazole, other vitamins and minerals that exist in natural plants and foods. They never do that. This is the system. Remember all of that early detection on Alzheimer's disease? That if we do a spinal tap on you, we can extract a very particular protein from your spinal fluid, and then we run it through our test, and then we can, again, openly detect if you're going to end up with Alzheimer's disease. So there are things that you can do now to keep yourself from getting Alzheimer's disease. All of that turned out to be fraudulent. All of it. and endless people did it. Well, it runs in my family, quote unquote, or I've had a family member who's had Alzheimer's disease, so I need to make sure and do this. The whole thing was fraud. It was a lie. Just snake oil. A giant procedure, again, that people paid for, thinking that they could prevent something. Want to prevent Alzheimer's disease? You prevent aluminum in your bloodstream. That's the major way of preventing it. In fact, that's the major way of preventing just about everything. Just get metals out of your body. As it turns out, walnuts do that, eating walnuts, a great deal of them, and then same thing with dark leafy greens. That if you consume them, again, in liquid form, or you consume them in hard fashion, then that helps as well. This too came from, let me see here, Dr. Makis as well. This was also on greatawakening.win. And it says, ivermectin, fenbendazole, DMSO, quercetin testimonial. 64-year-old Ohio man with rheumatoid arthritis for 30 years. Reports after 6 months incredible improvements. And then also said that hydroxychloroquine stopped working. It says the section below was captured from the text image of a screenshot and turned into text on their Macintosh computer, blah, blah, blah. And here's what it said. Again, this is from Makis and from this testimonial. Quote, before I started your protocol, I was in very bad shape from rheumatoid arthritis. I've been on, let me see, what is that? Plaquenil for about 30 years, something like that. But it had stopped being effective. I was having difficulty turning doorknobs, lifting a glass of water, and walking. I had near constant pain in my fingers, wrists, shoulders, and knees primarily, but other places would pop up as well. I was taking a lot of Advil to get through the day and to sleep. They said within weeks of starting your protocol, I started seeing noticeable improvements. Gradually, every part of my body got better. My fingers are nimble and pain-free. I never had shoulder pain anymore. I never have shoulder pain anymore, they said. I'm able to lift weights, play pickleball, pretty much anything want to do. I have occasional pain in my hands and knees, and my wrists are still not quite 100%, but I can easily lift myself up out of the bathtub now and can even do a few push-ups before the wrist pain is too much. I could not put any weight on my wrists before your protocol. I almost never take Advil or any pain reliever anymore, as even flare-ups are very minimal. Honestly, it feels almost miraculous. I've been off your protocol for 1 week because of the heart stent procedure. I have had no pain progression. I resumed the protocol today. As an FYI, since you have the fasting as optional, I want to let you know that I did a water-only fast for 3 days, each of the 3 months. Thank you so much for your help. I will send new labs next month. And they said the following. Key points, 64-year-old Ohio man with rheumatoid arthritis in September of 2025. He started ivermectin 1 milligram per kilogram per day, fenbendazole 888 milligrams per day, DMSO half a tablespoon in a glass of water or juice twice a day, topical DMSO on involved joints or sites of pain, and quercetin 2,000 milligrams per day. So there you go. Hey, if you have arthritis, if you have any body-wide inflammation, why not give that protocol right there a try? Makis has openly stated again, even based on a protocol very similar to that, and why not just try that one, that it cures psoriatic arthritis. Again, why not give it a try? What do you have to lose? Lastly, however, there's this. This is from the Islander at Islander World over on X, and they said the following bombshell. It's always a bombshell, but this is, again, shouldn't shock anybody. It says the Pfizer contracts signed with every EU country that went all in on the jab have now come to light, and the small print is crystal clear. Long-term side effects are not recognized. The vaccine's efficacy is unknown, and adverse effects are not yet known, may still appear. It doesn't get more clear on the betrayal. Globalist governments forced experimental shots on their own populations while quietly signing away liability and admitting in black and white that nobody knew what the long-term consequences would be. They loaded the dice, indemnified Pfizer, censored the skeptics, and called it public health. Read the documents yourself. The betrayal was baked in. And then they have the document right there. Not surprising. Pretty crystal clear. They put their negligence in writing and then they signed off on it. Depopulation, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real thing. Okay. With that said, thanks for listening as always. Feel free and check out the Substacks over there. Certainly the one coming out on Monday as well. theamericanclassroom.substack.com. And ladies and gentlemen, again, there will not be an episode on Wednesday, but there will be on Friday, where Dr. Robin McCutcheon, full economics professor of Marshall University, will be joining us again for a great discussion. Look forward to that talk as always, and we'll catch you then. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.